All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome again. We are excited to announce the Fireside Chat Tech Series. Today is the first one. The series will cover a wide range of topics impacting the healthcare segment. We're keeping it very short and crisp and only for 30 minutes so that you don't get bored. So throughout the series, we will be talking to experts and evangelists who have been there and done it. To begin with, we have an exciting topic for you. Leveraging Internet of Medical Things technology into action as a part of digital health service delivery. So Internet of Medical Things, in short, we call it as IoMT, or there are many who call it as IoHT as well. This is the first of the many conversations we'll have on IoMT. So to discuss more in detail on this topic of IoMT and its impact on healthcare, we have our expert with us. Please join me in welcoming Sharan Kantikar. Introducing Sharan. Sharan is an evangelist and a very accomplished person in the area of IoMT. Sharan is an entrepreneur with more than 24 years of IT experience. He heads the digital innovation team catering to digital transformation needs of end customers of TietoEVRY India. He has successfully founded and exited 2 startups earlier. He has worked for both services and product companies. He has helped organizations in business transformation and is an MIT certified digital transformation expert. Warm welcome to you, Mr. Sharan Kantikar.
Thank you. Hey, thanks, Srini. Thank you very much for inviting me to this Fireside Chat. I think, well, let me tell you, let's start this by wishing all of us good health, longevity, and success. The reason I say that is because the best thing that has happened in 2021 is that we all have survived 2020. I mean the pandemic, and we still continue to endure such unprecedented times. So we all really need a pat on our back to have stayed safe. Okay, so yeah, let's continue.
Thanks, Sharan. I've got questions in different aspects of IoMT in healthcare. So to start with, we all started working on IoMT way back in 2010, 11 years ago. At that point of time, we were thinking in next 20 years, the entire world will be connected and hospital systems would be interacting with each other and medical devices. At some point of time, during the peak of inflated expectations, we thought maybe we are still not there yet to the extent we dreamt of. But in the last 1 year, due to pandemic, we kind of feel that this has pushed industry to adopt IoMT because of remote patient monitoring and telehealth and telemedicine becoming very prominent due to pandemic. So my question to you in this background is, how has COVID-19 effect fueled the adoption? Have you seen specific areas of business cases that has seen higher adoption of IoMT given this background? Thank you.
Yes, very contextual question indeed. I would say that, okay, yes, the pandemic has changed the definition of what is normal. So the potential of wearable healthcare devices, it has really increased. Okay, it's quite apparent that it has increased. So during the pandemic, I think people have used medical sensor devices, body vitals measurement devices such as BP, SpO2, pulmonary functions, ECG for measuring their blood pressures, blood oxygen saturation, and also lung conditions, using the spirometers. So there have been many organizations, many device companies which have provided platforms, devices for a holistic healthcare system. Okay, starting from data acquisition, processing, and presenting critical data, vital data, which will facilitate interventions on a very contextual basis. So even if you look at what has happened during the pandemic in Wuhan, for instance, okay, so we had IoT gadgets and robots which are utilized to check temperatures of patients across clinics in communities where there were kiosks stationed to take body vital measurements, and these robots in fact also helped in sanitizing and providing food packets to the patients. So such was the intervention of medical sensor devices and IoMT that the pandemic has really now made this look very transnormal, I would say. And you see that okay, people are still chasing these devices. They've been having these medical kits like never before. Every house might, I'm sure, will be having these kits now. What is not known earlier, like say for example SpO2. I rarely used to see people using a SpO2 device at home, but today every home has a SpO2 because that's so critical to survive in this pandemic. So that really, in a sense, has changed the new normal, and it also has made IoMT more pervasive.
Thanks, Sharan, for the insights. You talked about biometric data tracking and platforms that are coming up to aid this. And you also talked about holistic healthcare view. So we talked about sensor devices and interventions, and also medical kits. So thanks for the insights. We all understand, agree that IoMT delivers benefit. But we also have heard about initiatives involving IoMT that did not give enterprises the perceived benefit that they had envisioned. So maybe at some point of time, somewhere they went wrong. So with that being said, how should enterprises approach this initiative? What factors are to be considered by technology leaders while building their strategic roadmap?
Yeah, that's a good question. Interesting one. And it's also very true. Okay, so if you look back in time, maybe 10 to 12 years back, you wouldn't have heard about IoMT or IoMT having made such an impact as you see it today. That's primarily because the affordability for those devices, okay, and also the communication cost. All these things were on the higher side. So and then there was an unprecedented technology change where the fabrication costs have come down. Okay, the communication costs have come down. While this is happening, I think the rate of adoption also started increasing. So today we see that okay, there's a quantum jump in adoption of IoT. If I can simply cite an example, I had bought a $50 sensor kit a few years back, which just costs about $5 now. So while many other verticals across the industry, it could be automobile or transport or retail and logistics, they all went ahead and started adopting IoT. The healthcare industry had a specific issue. Okay, that specific issue was not about adopting these devices or the affordability per se, but it is more got to do with security and data privacy. Because security is so fundamental here, because you're actually risking the life of a patient. Okay, if you don't secure data, if you don't provide the required security and privacy and the necessary interventions to make the IoMT safer for a patient's use, you'll be risking the patient's life. So that has actually pushed the adoption. It has made the adoption slower, I would say. However, as I told you earlier, the pandemic has actually changed the normal. Okay, so the adoption rate has very quickly increased in the last 12 to 14 months, a very significant increase indeed. And while we do this implementation across different healthcare organizations, the amount of care that the administrators need to take or the implementers need to take is primarily on the quality of sensor devices. Okay. I would rate that as one of the first prerequisite, and then security and safety, of course. Then we also talk about data privacy here. Complying to GDPR, for example. And again, another fundamental prerequisite would be the ease of use. So because we talk about consumer wearables or any other healthcare widgets that are wearables, these have to be ergonomically constructed. When I say ergonomically constructed, they have to be simple to use and easy to use, because this will be used by all sections of all ages. It could be elders, it could be youngsters, adults, children. So ease of use is again a fundamental prerequisite. And then adherence to medical standards. When I say adherence to medical standards, it could be as simple as, let's say, bringing in Open EHR, for example, or conforming to OMA standards. So as we see that the IoT and IoMT standards are still evolving, However, whatever standards are there established, those needs to be adhered to. And then, of course, a smoother integration of IT and OT. Okay, when I say IT and OT, it is essentially got to do with the IoMT implementation, which actually smoothens out your healthcare processes. How do you integrate this IoMT into your IT infrastructure? That's another fundamental prerequisite. So I think if these things are taken care, the implementation of IoMT across any organization, healthcare organization per se, will be smoother.
Thanks, Sharan. You talked about quite a few interesting points. One thing that stood out for me is how do you really integrate it with IT infrastructure? So that kind of relates to my next question that I had for you. So we all know that IoMT device market is growing, but it comes with varied network interfaces, communication protocols, data structures, data semantics, a lot of things that are there to take care of. What is the approach to tackle the problem of interoperability and data management, specifically for organizations with legacy systems? So since we talked about integrating it into our IT infrastructure, many of us have legacy systems. So how can we really make this happen?
Okay. Yes. So coming to the interoperability issue, as you see that when you talk about IoMT or any IoT devices for that matter, interoperability is at the helm of affairs, because you will be actually looking at how do you integrate different devices, okay, devices that talk different protocols, okay, and also different connectivities. So interoperability as such is a perennial problem, I would say, okay, not just for IoMT, but for every other software and hardware solution. So IoMT also suffers from lack of standardization, as I was referring to, with respect to protocols, data, hardware, and security. So when you talk about legacy systems, so the best approach to get the basic operation to meet minimum standard is to choose hardware that subscribes to open standards like OMA, for example, or OpenEHR. Okay, selection of IoT platform which is protocol agnostic and compatible with legacy systems to deal with any integration idiosyncrasies. That is something which we need to do. Why I say this is because today we have different protocols, different proprietary protocols, Leopard, MQTT, or CoAP. There are very different proprietary implementations. Okay, maybe as we go ahead, they'll get standardized. But if you look back 4 or 5 years behind, so you will see that okay, there were umpteen number of protocol and proprietary implementations of these protocols. So anybody who would want to implement a IoT platform should be actually looking at hooking up all these protocols. I mean, integrating all these different protocols, writing plugins for these protocols, making this platform really protocol agnostic. So it should be seamless, and it should be like a plug and play thing. Otherwise, what happens is you will not be able to integrate some of the things which you already bought in a hospital environment. Let's say in a large healthcare enterprise, you have old sensors, you have new sensors which you are bringing. All of these talk different protocols, and you don't find a common platform to do this. So that means there's an extra load on your IT solution engineers to write plugins, okay, and to spend that extra effort and dollar. So besides the variety and volume of data that IoMT systems may throw in, this also poses a very potent challenge, I would say, especially when legacy systems are not subscribed to any data management platforms where they are subject to data cleansing and pre-processing. So putting up a common data platform with integration hooks again is very critical, especially when the legacy systems don't subscribe to a standard. So OpenEHR in that case is a good example of standardization.
Thanks, Sharan. That was pretty interesting. Now I'll come to the question that I'm very much interested in asking you. This is regarding the security and privacy. You know, we've been developing medical devices, be it set up at home where we have weaker Wi-Fi security, or even in a hospital network. The moment a device gets into a hospital network, and devices could be Wi-Fi enabled, and if we can safely assume that somebody will surely try to install malware into these devices, and it becomes a huge problem if that happens within a hospital network. So my question to you is, um, how do you see security for IoMT being different than the traditional healthcare desktop or web solutions?
Okay. Well, okay, the security in IoMT is a far more serious business than we think it is, primarily due to the fact that we may risk lives, as I told you earlier also. Okay, if security is undermined, it's just not loss of enterprise value, but also loss of public life, a patient's life, to be specific. So traditional healthcare applications are more on premise, which are now moving to cloud progressively as we speak. So the security concerns on premise or in a cloud, especially for the data in transit or for the data at rest, is addressed, okay, by various means. It could be DSL, SSL, and a combination of public key infrastructure like RSA and AES. By nature, a complex system of connected devices will actually open up new attack vectors. Okay, when I say starting from your device where you start acquiring data to processing data and presenting data, the complete end-to-end ecosystem or infrastructure is fraught with vectors. Okay, so the surface of the vectors is quite large. So even if each device, let's say you have a very specialized device which is highly secure, has its own encryption, built-in encryption and all, yes, independently it may be safe and secure, but once it gets connected into the ecosystem, it is subject to vulnerabilities. Okay, so a level of comprehensive approach, okay, an end-to-end approach is required to secure this. So especially system operators or I would say integrators must therefore provide end-to-end protection against all possible attack vectors. Okay, probably dividing their attention and resources across the system. So let's talk more about devices. When it comes to devices, there is a lot that can happen, and this actually is of particular interest because we talk about the devices in IoMT and we talk about the topic of security by design, because we are talking about not hundreds or millions of devices. We're talking about nearly about 15 billion devices which will be onboarded in the next 2 to 3 years. Okay, so that means you can see the attack vectors, okay, and the threat surface. Every device which comes in which doesn't have a security infrastructure in place are vulnerable. So security by design would mean that, okay, you need to start thinking like an attacker, and in return you start layering your defenses, okay, in a way which will protect your data and devices in event of breaches. The approach would be simply about reliable identification, authentication, and access methods. So let's say, for example, whenever I want to boot my device, sensor device, I use a secure boot. Or whenever I want to do a firmware upgrade on my sensor device, it should be a secure code update. Okay, then I should have key protections, and also the devices have to be tamper-proof, because any of the electronics can be actually compromised, and once we compromise, the encryption keys can also get compromised. So access control of secure resources, and then of course the session authentication. So these are some of the critical security features which need to be addressed to make your whole IoMT implementation safer. Because as I said, once the device is secured, okay, then comes the next part of it. Okay, when you go to the edge, your edge gateway needs to be secured. Okay, from the edge, when you transit your data to the cloud, okay, again the transit security for the data has to be established. And then once you hit the cloud where your healthcare application is stationed, you have to actually secure that application as well. So this is the kind of a larger security envelope which you need to implement.
Thanks, Sharan. As this is a very important question, I'm pretty sure our vendors, customers, and a lot of startups would be surely interested in knowing more and much more in detail this. So maybe at some point of time we should be able to have a separate fireside chat specifically on privacy, security, and governance. And,
yes, I would also like to highlight. Sorry to interrupt. I'd also like to highlight, Srini, that in TietoEVRY, we have such a team which can actually take up these kind of security audits for any IoMT implementations or IoT implementations across different verticals. So that's a very interesting aspect where we have come up with such capabilities, and also we can do a lot of controlled simulated testing to see if the environment, the implementation environment is safe or not.
Fantastic. That's nice to know. So now I'll come to another important question. So with this pandemic, everything has become virtual. If you look at countries which has a single payer system where healthcare is based on social security, they're all trying to implement strategies for population health management, wherein they want to nip the healthcare issues at a population level itself, so that overall cost of care could be much lower. So my question to you is, as care becomes more virtual and 24/7, how will IoMT impact population health strategies?
Okay, yeah, I think whatever we have been discussing, this very nicely summarizes that. Okay, yes. The next 10 to 15 years, okay, you'll have a very unprecedented growth in the connected healthcare ecosystem, I would say, okay, because there will be an increasing demand for independent living and also wellness solutions. When I say wellness solutions, it could be across communities, across homes, across hospitals, across clinical facilities, okay, more pronounced in the community healthcare. Then, of course, artificial intelligence will be an integral part of healthcare, needless to say. And then technology that will continue to drive healthcare innovation, including connected platforms, remote care. And this particular thing which I wanted to specifically underscore is about voice interaction, which will enhance patient care. And there has been, again, a very unprecedented development in this area where conversational AI has actually taken a step ahead. And today you see that a lot of patient care, remote patient care, is actually facilitated by a conversational user interface. So as I told, increasing demand for independent living and wellness solutions, this will trigger a further adoption of IoMT and healthcare services in general. So, and also as the longevity increases, demand for quality independent living and also elder care, these will actually go on the higher side. So I would definitely summarize that as yes, this will actually see a very unprecedented growth.
Fantastic. Thanks a lot, Sharan. I had one more question, but since we have 5 minutes and we promised audience that we'll use our 30 minutes only for this, I'll take up a couple of questions from the audience. We had questions when people registered as well. So my first question would be, what are the new skill sets healthcare IT function can look to acquire to easily embrace IoMT?
Okay. If I look at IoMT and if there have to be certain skills which will address the specific needs of IoMT, it's a wider gamut. Starting from the device, okay, on the embedded side, people would have to know how these protocols function, okay, how the sensors are built, what are the connectivities for these sensors, okay, how the connectivity is hooked, and then the integration of these devices to the platform. So when I say that, okay, we jump from an embedded system to the network and system integration side, because you're actually now connecting a device to a platform. And then in terms of acquiring this data and processing this data, so we talk about data management here. So how does heterogeneous data like in IoMT, the variety and volume of data, how this data needs to be coming to a common data platform, and then looked at for the business insights or the healthcare insights. So all this requires a good view of data management platforms, big data. Also, in terms of the healthcare solution itself, it requires a good know-how of enterprise solutioning. So as I told you, it's from an end-to-end perspective, it's a wider gamut of skill sets people should have. So a good integration of embedded side skills and application side skills is a underscoring necessity of IoMT implementations.
Fantastic. Thanks a lot. We have a very interesting question from one of the attendees. Person is asking, what does the learning curve look like for patients using IoMT? Are the patients ready for mass adoption of IoMT devices?
Yeah, very genuine question. I love this question because it really impacts whatever we have said all this time. Finally, if the patient, the learning curve for the patient for on any IoMT device is high or something like that, then I think it heads to a failure. Yes, so if you see the devices of today, they are far more ergonomically built, okay, easy to use. So that's why, in fact, it is one of the factors which will affect or impact adoptability. So besides affordability, ease of use is one of the primary factor which will impact the adoptability. So I don't see a problem in learning curve because even a nursery going kid today uses an Apple phone or an Android app or iOS app. So that should not be an issue at all. It has been overly simplified, I would say.
Fantastic. So we have one more question. Maybe we have answered this partially. How can IoMT be used in the new normal? And how can IoMT help the battle against COVID effectively?
Okay, so as we've been discussing, if you look at what all has happened during the pandemic, okay, how communities have come together, how elder care has been impacted, how people have been using remote monitoring of vitals, how people have been actually looking at ambulatory services. Okay, so if you look at a holistic view of healthcare solution, starting from patient care, elder care, assisted living, wellness care, okay, all these things have an unprecedented intervention of IoMT. Now, if you look at how this has actually helped in the pandemic, yes, people were actually given sensor kits after they got discharged after taking the first few weeks of COVID treatment from the hospital. So this essentially means that there was a continuous care, continuous monitoring of the patients who got discharged. This essentially actually helped to ease the shortage of beds because people were being looked at and taken care of even at their homes. That the continuous treatment, okay, was ensured by IoMT intervention. Otherwise, it would have been very difficult. So even today, there is a serious situation where in some of the states you don't find beds. That's because whatever could have been done at the convenience of your home using IoMT was actually done in the hospital. So that actually increased the load on the hospital for providing the beds. So this is one example I'm giving. But if you look at several other things where people have actually used sensor kits rather than going to hospitals, they have been actually sitting at home and monitoring their vitals, which actually gave them, a better know-how, a better confidence that okay, whether they have been impacted by this corona disease or not. So this actually saves a lot of time for them, decreases the load on the hospital, and essentially provides better care outcomes.
Fantastic. Thanks a lot, Sharan, for spending time with all of us. It is always a lot of learning whenever I speak to you, and it's always a pleasure to be talking to you. Thanks for taking your time, and I thank all the audience. There are some more questions that we'll try to answer offline. We have some more tech series coming up. The next one will be talking about innovations in general. That will be a very interesting topic for sure. One of the veterans from the industry will be talking about it. And the second one from now on will be on how do we really simplify healthcare application portfolio when large healthcare organizations have hundreds and thousands of applications within their portfolio. So very interesting topics coming up. I look forward meeting you all there. Thanks a lot.